Delishees, grab a plate and taste the delicious culture. I'm your host, Jon Francois. We are feasting on food, pop culture, lifestyle, Love is Blind Season 10, all the good things with relationship expert Jackie Dorman. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, it's so great to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, isn't this great? So many things to talk about. Let's start with the three questions that anchor this podcast. First up, what is a delicious meal that you've had lately?
Well, we just went out for my daughter's birthday to this spot only had like 3 tables inside and a very, very long waiting list. And so it tells you how good the food is, right? But they specialize in this smash burger that has this really spicy relish on it and this amazing focaccia. So I just had that on Monday night. So that's probably what's uppermost in my mind, especially the focaccia. It had this honey butter that had like this kick to it, and it was just, I mean, I could have eaten 100 pieces of it for sure.
Oh my God, that sounds delicious. So, smash burger, what defines a smash burger? Is it just like the size of the meat? Is it just like how many things you can pack onto a burger? Like, what defines it?
I think what defines it, not a culinary expert, friends, but that they're really thin patties. And so like smash burgers, so like the way they cook the meat, they like smash it down, make it really thin. It's like a really thin piece of beef.
Hmm.
I think that that is probably what defines it. So there's 2 different really thin patties, and then there's cheese, of course, and then this beautiful, amazing relish that they home make there, and it was delicious.
And you are, so I'm based in Vermont. You're based in Austin, Texas right now. Is that a burger that is like specific to Austin? Is that something that you can get anywhere around the
I think
country,
you'll get it
maybe?
anywhere. I think smash burgers are everywhere. I think that they're something that people really love. But I've had them in different states. I travel a lot, so I know that there are other places besides here. But Austin really is the food tour. People are sleeping on Austin. Foodies, you would love Austin, Texas. We have everything, and um, highly rated culinary experiences here.
Yeah, from what I know of Austin, I know the South by Southwest Festival. I know, of course, Joe Rogan has his podcast there. And I think I've heard a little bit about the food culture there. Why do you think people sleep on Austin so much?
Because I think that people think Texas, right? So they think Texas food. So like whatever you think of when you think of Texas, like barbecue. What else would you think? Tex-Mex, of course. But we have everything here. We have some amazing Asian restaurants. We have French restaurants. Like I gained 30 pounds when I moved here. I've lived here for 8 years, and it's because we call it the food tour. My husband and I, we ate at all these different restaurants, different cuisines. Every time our friends come in town, they're like, "Hey, I heard about this one restaurant. Can we go?" And so we're always eating out at these amazing places.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say the burger kind of cuisine, like that you just described, is that your favorite kind of cuisine, or do you have another preferred cuisine?
I have some friends that are true foodies, and I love dining with them because they make dining an experience. They're from Portugal, and they're like, "Jackie, this is the way that you eat." And we usually eat in different courses, and I'm trying things I've never tried before. But I do like American food. It was my daughter's birthday. She loves American food. She loves burgers and that kind of thing. So that's definitely one of the things that we love for sure.
Love that. So, something on a burger I've never had before. I think you said you had honey butter on this burger.
No, that was on the focaccia that came on the side. It was like a
Oh,
honey butter, but it had like a spiciness to it. It was really interesting.
I have no idea what a focaccia is. Can you explain that to me?
It's bread. Focaccia is bread, but this
Oh,
focaccia was really like was grilled and it was crispy. So it was crispy on the outside and really soft on the inside. I probably make everyone everyone that knows what focaccia is like drooling right now. But it was perfectly done, like in a skillet type of situation with this butter, and it was amazing.
okay, okay. Burger with a side of the focaccia bread that you mentioned. I mean, I know that, bread in itself can be like sort of an appetizer before the main dish, but served like a side with the burger, like it's like it's fries. That's a new thing to me. I've never heard of that before. That sounds delicious.
Yeah, I don't think it was supposed to come together, but that's just what I ordered. So it
All right.
sounded good. That's just what I wanted. So I ordered the bread and then the burger came out pretty quickly. So yeah, and yeah, it did have fries, some garlic aioli fries. They were delicious as well. But yeah, so that's just my recent. I mean, I'm eating great things. I really am loving homemade popcorn at home in coconut oil with grass-fed butter
Oh.
right now. That is a treat for me. So we've been making a lot of that, but we do love to eat. I will tell you that.
Oh my god, homemade popcorn. Now I'm gonna feel bad because I just buy the pre-made Orville Redenbacher popcorn. Like my thing right now
No.
is okay. Okay. Tell me why that popcorn is wrong. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I've heard the news on the street is that that popcorn might have some chemicals in it that's not so good for you, but, the
Oh,
old-fashioned way, because I was a kid in the '80s, I was a teenager in the '90s, but in the '80s when I was a kid, making popcorn, in the pot with the lid over the fire and constantly moving it, that was a thing of my childhood, and so I love making popcorn that way. I should say I love my husband making popcorn that way, and it's delicious. I usually have him do
ah.
it.
So okay, if I get this correctly, like the kernel corn that I see in the grocery store that's made for homemade popcorn, you get that, and then you add all your ingredients. I mean, how long
You
does it
cook it
take to make
in
homemade?
coconut oil, so that's the oil that I cook it in is coconut oil, and then,
Okay,
you start hearing it pop, and as soon as you start hearing those first kernels pop, you gotta keep moving it fast, you gotta pay attention because it's gonna pop really quick, and you don't want it to burn because there's nothing worse than the smell and the taste of burnt popcorn, right? And so
yeah,
getting that off the burner, there's gonna be some kernels that are not all the way popped, that's fine, and then when it's still warm, getting that grass-fed butter and then sometimes some Italian seasoning on it is what I like to do, and it's delicious.
that is a special popcorn experience. And the coconut oil, what does adding in the coconut oil do to the popcorn?
I mean, it's healthier. It's a healthier oil. We don't cook it at too high of a heat. And I just think that I like the taste. If you like the light taste of coconut, which I do, that's why. You could also probably do avocado oil. I wouldn't do olive oil, but you could do avocado oil. It's delicious.
So, and how long does it take to make homemade popcorn compared to the pre-made popcorn that we know so well
I mean,
that we
the
shouldn't be eating?
pre-made is like 3 or 4 minutes in the microwave, and I think the homemade is probably it's probably less than 10. So it's worth it.
Wow. So the Orville Redenbacher popcorn. I don't know if this is a bad thing, but usually it just takes a minute and a half in the microwave. I guess it
There you
depends on
go.
like the wattage. I think it depends on the
Yeah.
wattage of the microwave, but like, yeah, 10 minutes. That's not bad. 10 minutes for homemade
Yeah,
popcorn.
and for
All
everything,
right.
prepping it, like putting the oil in the pan, melting the oil, putting the kernels in, putting the butter in at the end, I'd say start to finish about 10 minutes.
What is a delicious piece of pop culture that you've been consuming lately? This could be a TV show, movie, music, book, play, anything.
And I know that we might talk about Love Is Blind, and I definitely consumed that. It's part of my
Yeah,
job to stay up on that, but I just literally binged over the last week, a new show called Age of Attraction. Have you heard this one?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've seen it shown up on the Netflix slides. Yeah, tell me what the show's about.
So it basically is strangers, same as like it's not blind, but you are blind on age. So you don't know, you're not allowed to share your age. So strangers coming together, men and women, all different ages, a mix of all different ages of men and women, and then beginning to have these dates face to face in this controlled environment where you're getting to know people, you're seeing what you match on with people as far as personality and likes and dislikes and life experience. And then you're supposed to choose one of those people to go to this promise room with, where you give each other a promise ring, where you're going to, and you can decline, you can say yes or no to this pledge of promise, and then you go forward into that next stage of being a couple. And at that promise thing, after you decide yes or no, you tell your ages, right? Or during saying yes or no, you tell your ages, and then you go forward into the outside world of what does it look like to be a couple with this age difference. And some of these age differences were pretty shocking, both with the woman being older and the man being older. So we have like 30 age differences between a girl, a 27-year-old girl, and an 70-year-old man, 60-year-old man, 60 and 27. And then we have a 55-year-old woman with a 32-year-old man. Just a lot of really different May December romance type of things. What's interesting is none of the couples picked anyone who was less than 10 years um, in a 10-year window. And of course they could have, because there are definitely people there that are more your peers, but they didn't gravitate towards each other.
Is there a period like Love Is Blind where these people don't see each other and they're speaking with each other, or no? They
No,
see each other from the get go.
they always see each other. They just don't know
Okay.
how old each the thing that's missing, the thing that they're blind on is age. They don't know how old the people are. Now, I'm a pretty good guess of age, And I will tell you, I think that women guess other women's ages really accurately. But what I saw from this experiment, and I know this already because I'm a matchmaker and a dating coach, that men are not a good gauge of women's ages. And so a lot of
Right,
times people
right.
say, hey, why is he talking to that woman that's too young for him? A lot of times he may not know that that woman's as young as she is. Why is that guy talking to that woman that's so much older? And a lot of times he might think she's 35 when she's really 50. I don't think men are as good at guessing age as women are.
Hmm. I would imagine that if it was like, you had mentioned like a really, it could be a really young woman and especially older man, that it would be like very obvious to see, okay, maybe you're like 75, 80 years old on the guy's side, something like that. But okay, so can you give me an example of like how far apart the guy is or how wrong the guy is in guessing the age from the show? Like, what was like the most absurd example where the guy got it so completely wrong?
I mean, in that example, he's 60, she ends up being 27. I think that he thought she was in her mid to later 30s. In his defense, she was
Oh,
really mature for her age, so she was carrying herself
okay.
very maturely. And they both were, they were, non-white people, so they were brown people, and a lot of times, they were saying funny, little phrases in the show of, hey, we age better than other people do, and so that's why we can't tell each other's ages. But
Yeah.
in one situation, I mean, the woman was very obviously, I'm 51 years old. I knew that she was very obviously someone who's in her mid 50s. And the guy that chose her was in his 20s. And he thought that she was in her 30s. And I'm like, bro, come on. Come on now. Come on.
So would you say that men tend to judge women's age by their maturity and women tend to judge men's age by just looking at every facet of their physical appearance? Is that what we're aiming at? Is
I think that women take in the entire picture. I think that we just have a better idea of nuance and we're more intuitive than men are. I think that men are
Mhm.
looking at possibly the youthfulness of someone, the youthfulness of how they act and their personality. I think that that is what they're gauging more than they're gauging the actual lines on someone's face or, the things that are dead giveaways. Like we always say, women, their face might look great, but their hands are gonna give away their age, or their neck's gonna give away their age.
Yeah.
But men don't know stuff like that. Women are the ones that know stuff like that.
Hmm. All right. Well, thank you. Age of Attraction. Yeah, I've seen it on Netflix and definitely have to put it in our queue, my wife and I's queue, along with all the other dating shows that we've been watching, Love Is Blind and Ultimatum and so on and so forth. So
I watched The
that's
Ultimatum as well. I feel like with, Age of Attraction, it's going to be interesting to see how these people think they can overcome these huge age differences and stay together. Because of course, their
mm,
families are not on board. Even worse than Love Is Blind, like, I met someone that I never saw before and got engaged to them, but at least, we're more age appropriate, we're more peers in that experiment. In this experiment, we're talking about people that are old enough to be your mom or dad.
let's talk about the delicious events that has happened in your life lately. What positive thing has happened in your world, Jackie?
I am having so many delicious events. I have a new book coming out at the end of the month. So it's my
All right.
third book. And I really feel like when you write a book, it's like kind of giving birth to a child. And so I have that coming up. And then my child, my son, who is our oldest child, he just turned 30 in December. He is also the only one who's not married. And we are having the deliciousness of heading up to his wedding at the end of May. So we are in pre wedding prep right now. We're really excited that he is getting married, and the girl he's marrying and her family. And so it's just a beautiful time of family. Normally, we travel a lot at this time of year for work, but we are staying close to home, just doing a lot of family stuff leading up to that.
Now, what is the role of yourself as a mother in this wedding planning of sorts? Because I know that every parent can have their different experience with it. There's the parents that are hands off and they let their children do whatever they want. They're the parents that are like, I want to invite all these relatives, and maybe you should, have this setting over here and this table over there. Like, what kind of parent would you describe yourself in your son's wedding as he's planning it?
Well, the good news is that because it's my son, I don't have to plan any of it. So I love that. The rehearsal dinner is the only thing the groom's parents are responsible for as far as planning. But he's marrying an only child. His wife, his fiance, wife to be, is an only child, and she is having a big wedding. I have two daughters that are already married. And so, of course, we planned those weddings. And both my daughters pretty much knew what they wanted, and I just really helped along the way, along with their friends and other women in our family. But this wedding, my son is it's funny because we all laugh. It's funny that he would have the biggest wedding. So both of his sisters opted for small weddings. They didn't want to invite a lot of people, but his fiance is inviting over 250 people to this wedding. So it's going to be the
Wow.
biggest wedding that any of us have ever even been to. And so it's going to be a fun time. So thankfully I don't have to do really anything except find my own dress and show up.
So, maybe this is a tradition that I'm not too aware of. So, is it tradition that the parents play more of an active role in a daughter's wedding as opposed to a son's wedding? And
Yeah.
okay, you're nodding your head. Why is that, if I may ask?
I don't know why it is. I just know that traditionally in America, for most Americans, the bride's family is the one that throws the wedding, and the groom's family throws the rehearsal dinner, maybe helps pay for a honeymoon, or
Mm.
something like that. But the wedding is usually the father of the bride, the mother of the bride. So I had two of those because I have two daughters. So, but once again, they both had really small weddings, and so my son is having this big 250 person wedding, and yeah, so I'm like, "Wow, yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun time." And then they're gonna go to Fiji afterwards, so, so excited for them. But, yeah, I'm glad that I don't have to be involved in not just the planning of that, but also the payday of that, because that's gonna be a big wedding.
Oh yeah, for sure. How is your son feeling about that giant wedding that his fiance is putting together? Is he okay with it? Is he kind of like, oh man, maybe we could like economize here and there? Like, how's he feeling?
I think he's excited about it. You know, his fiance has a lot of friends, and my son has always been kind of the nerd that was in his room drawing. He's an artist, he's a designer, and so you know that a big huge social circle has never been his thing. But he's very friendly, and he's become outgoing in later years, and so I think he's excited for it. But if he was the one planning a wedding, he probably would have had a small wedding, just like his sisters. I bet.
Yeah, yeah. My wife and I, we had maybe less than 100 people, like about 80 or so people at
Yeah.
our wedding. And I think originally the count was like 100, but as always, like there are certain people that cannot show up, and that makes it a lot easier. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think just the combination of like, we prefer as intimate of a wedding as possible, and also we don't have much money, like it just both
Yeah.
it
Those
those
two
two
things go
forces,
together.
yeah, it
Yeah.
worked just wonderfully. And
Yeah.
yeah, and for certain people that wanted to invite like 25 guests, we just had to say, ooh yeah, maybe try one or two.
I think that's catching on ever since COVID. I see because, you know, obviously I'm part of the wedding industry in the way of being a matchmaker and a relationship coach, people having smaller and smaller weddings. There are people that still have the huge weddings, but a lot of people even elope now, or they have a courthouse wedding and then they have a party. Courthouse weddings are really popular right now, where you dress up and you get a photographer and you get these beautiful courthouse pictures, and then you have a reception even later, maybe even after the honeymoon. So people are doing things very differently than they used to do them.
What kind of wedding did you have?
I had my original wedding, we eloped, sort of. We had our parents and our children because we're a blended family. So we had small children when we got married, and so our small children and our parents were at our wedding, and it was in a little chapel in Amish country. And then 10 years later, which was what we said we would do on our 10th anniversary, we had a vow renewal, and we had a bigger wedding of like 75, 80 people that we were really close to. But then I wore the dress and we did the whole thing. And now we're going to be married for 20 years. And so next year on our 20th, we were talking about doing another vow renewal, maybe with our kids, our grown kids and their spouses, possibly like in Hawaii or something.
What do you think about vow renewals? Is that something that you strongly advise couples to do in order to like reignite an energy in the marriage that maybe gets lost after 10 or 20 years? Like, how do you go about talking about a vow renewal process if a couple wanted to ask you whether they should do it or not?
I mean, I think that it's something you could do every year. You don't have to have a party, you don't have to buy a special dress, but my husband and I have something we do at the end of every year called the State of Our Union. So if the country can have a state of the union, we can have a state of our union. And so we just get, we get together and we go somewhere and we talk about, our relationship and what worked this year and what didn't, and kind of where we are and where we want to go in the future. And I kind of think of that as a renewal, right? Just renewing our our desire to continue to build and grow together, renewing our vows, so to speak, our love for each other and our commitment to one another. But as far as inviting people or doing something formal, even if it's just the two of you, I don't think you have to do that every year, but I think it'd be fun to do it at landmark years. So possibly, 10, 20, 30, 50. I don't think I've been to a lot of them and I think they're very special, especially since a lot of people, don't stay married nowadays. I think that it's right to celebrate marriage if you've been able to continue to grow together and not apart.
So I believe you have sparked as a matchmaker over 1,600 marriages, and what amount of those marriages are still around? What amounts maybe aren't lasting as long as you have mentioned?
I personally know of about a dozen divorces. So I know of about a dozen divorces. Most of those people divorced in the first year and a half, I would say. And to be fair, I think that most of those couples were people that were told that they might be rushing and maybe they should slow down a bit and take some more time to get to know one another. And then I just found out today before I came on the podcast that one of my brides that got married in 23 actually passed away. So I just
Oh
found
no.
out that she passed away. So about a dozen divorces, and I know of at least one. I know of two, one groom and one bride, different marriages that have passed away untimely, very, very young.
Wow. Huh. And is I I mean you can tell me as much or as little as you want, but was that passing like was it unexpected? Was it already like seen coming because they already had like this health issue for
No,
some
they
time
they
or
were both unexpected. So one was an
mm,
accident, and the other, both of them, I think, were pretty unexpected. So, yeah, so we never know. We never know what life's going to hold. And so I am a firm believer of, let's get to the good part. Let's get to the good part. Why save the best things for later? I definitely believe in living in the moment. And that doesn't mean being irresponsible, but it means understanding that life is a gift and it's called the present, and making sure that you're not saving all the good stuff for the future. It's called the present for a reason because life is a gift every day and we should be enjoying it.
hmm. Um what sorry, I don't mean to sound negative here. I'm just curious, but what is a common reason for marriages not lasting as long, based on your based on your experience? Like what's and actually to balance that out, what is a common reason you see the marriages, especially those that you have put together, being successful? So successful and non-successful. Like what are the common reasons for those happening?
Yeah, well, I should clarify that, the 1,600 plus people that we have helped to, meet, match, and get married haven't all been personally handpicked and match made. Some of them have, but we have a
Mhm.
program called Last Year Single where marriage minded people come, they meet each other, they get prepared for what it looks like to be in marriage while they're dating and meeting people. And so that's kind of the secret sauce of our success to help people do that heart work so that they can be clear on what, not just that they want to get married, but what kind of person would they need to marry. And so I think that marriages that don't last long are marriages that are built on more of the sea of chemistry. So infatuation type stuff. And it's scientifically proven that infatuation will not and cannot last longer than 14 months, meaning that within 14 months of knowing someone, the new's going to wear off. The rose colored glasses are going to come off and you're going to see some things that you don't like. You're going to see some things that are incompatible. Those butterfly feelings of just excitement are going to wane and you're going to be left with what's really there. And so people that base long-term commitments on short-term feelings, not a good idea. That's why we need to really be clear about what we want going forward and what we need long term. And so the C's, the letter C's that are more important in me matchmaking or me even being a dating or relationship coach are the C's of compatibility, the C's of consistency, the C's of communication, the C's of character. There's so many C's that are more important than chemistry. But a lot of people want chemistry to drive the bus in their romantic relationships. It's like, but I don't feel a spark. Well, the problem is that your nervous system sparks because of dysfunctional things because you haven't healed it yet. And so we got to deal with what you're attracted to and what your type is, especially if it's not healthy, before you go out there sparking with people and then running off and getting married.
Hmm. I'm thinking about my connection to a matchmaker like 10 or 15 years ago. This was when I used to live in Connecticut. I currently live in Vermont. And this was like when I was like starting to get into the dating scene. There was this matchmaker that would hold these like speed dating and blind dating events. And
Yeah.
I would take part in that. I mean, I found my wife through an online dating app, so that's completely different. But I guess I'm curious as to your backstory. Like, how did you get into the matchmaking and relationship coach field? And also, what does your day to day look like? Because someone tells me they work at Home Depot. Okay, I have an idea of what their day to day looks like. But someone tells me
Yeah.
that they matchmake and they're a relationship coach. I'm like, huh? Like, what's that 9 to 5 schedule looking like?
I mean, it varies. It looks different depending on what I have going on. But I got into this because I've always been good at it. I've always been good at it. I was the friend in school that you would give the note to that would go to your crush and try to hype you up and try to get them to like you and, go with you is what we used to say when I was in middle school and high school. You would go together. We never really specified where exactly, but we were going to go steady, together. And so I've always loved love. I helped 15 of my friends. So 15 of my personal friends, I helped in their relationships and even match made them. So some of those people I actually match made and they married those people that I match made them with. So I've always known that I was good at this. And then pandemic is when I decided to do it as not a hobby, but as a profession. So during pandemic, in fact, pandemic hadn't started yet. It was about to start, but none of us knew it. And my mom had just passed away. I was grieving. I was really dissatisfied. Like a lot of times when we're grieving, we'll take a deeper look at our life. When someone passes, we're reminded how short life is. And then we'll ask ourselves, am I doing what I really want to do with my life? With however long I have on this earth. And so I was thinking those types of thoughts. And I just felt like I had permission to do things that I really enjoyed to do. And one of those was this. And so I just put it out to my warm audience on Facebook. Hey, I'm going to be teaching this course. I'm going to call it Married in 12 Months or Less. If you're a single and you feel stuck in the area of relationships, come join my free course. And it just exploded. And then a month later, we were all locked down in pandemic, even though we didn't know it was coming. And by October of that year, I was live on the radio on 350 stations as the love guru. And by January of the next year, 21, I had my first wedding. So
Wow.
9 months later, I had my first wedding, and then it's just snowballed from there. So a typical day of my life looks like I get up. I'm married. I live in Austin, Texas. I get up in the morning and I try to do some form of healthy thing, like, go walk or work out. I don't always do it. I should, but I don't. And then I usually go straight to looking at my emails, responding to things. Right now, I'm in a book launch. So a lot of my days look like podcast interviews. Tomorrow, I have to travel to Dallas to be on a podcast. So sometimes traveling going to in person into interviews. I've been on the news a bunch of times just recently in the last month or so because of Valentine's Day. And so media opportunities, media interviews. I do some high level matchmaking still. So I do higher level matchmaking with some of my personal clients. I have a huge program called Last Year Single that has, that has served at least 10,000 singles in the last 5 years. And so managing that, managing my team. I have a whole team of coaches that work for me. And so I'm just a busy bee.
What do you mean by high level matchmaking? What's that compared to regular matchmaking?
So because I'm so busy right now and because really my desire right now is to get out the matchmaker mindset. I want everybody to be able to become their own matchmaker. So my new book is really heavy in the matchmaker mindset. Like don't be out there as a single thinking like a burnout dater. Think like a matchmaker in order to be able to kind of help matchmake yourself. And so helping people, because I can't help every single person. No matchmaker can help every single person, but I have a desire to help people. And so putting out that book is my way of doing that. So I'm focused on that. So I can't really be focused on a lot of personal matchmaking, but I still do take some private clients. They have to fit a very specific criteria. I have to really know that I can match make them without a lot of heavy lifting on my part. So we have a questionnaire, they fill it out. There's a very specific type of client that I'm looking for in this season since I'm so busy. But I have lots of other dating coaches that work for me, relationship coaches that work for me. So if they can't work directly with me, they can work with someone else. And I do have an exciting announcement of some more matchmaking opportunities coming really soon in the summer through our program. So even though I can't do it anymore, we've found a way for more and more people to get access to matchmaking.
Uh,
I can't say what it is quite yet, but I will tell you
okay.
that is pretty cool.
Specific type of client. Like I'm hung on those words. What would be the ideal client that you could see
They
yourself
have to have done the
matching?
work. They have to be really healthy. They have to be out of their own way, as far as there's people that show up and they think that all they're missing is a matchmaker. I can't tell you how many people have been like, oh, you're a matchmaker, matchmake me. But they don't want to take a deeper look at why they're single, why they haven't met anyone already, about their habits, about their schedules, about their capacity, about their margins. People say they want a relationship, but there's no room in their life for a relationship or to build a relationship. And so this questionnaire is very in depth about where they are, what kind of work they've done, how they've prepared for a relationship, and how relationship ready they are.
And so you take all these questionnaires from all these clients, and I would imagine that you spend a day, maybe two, like looking at all these questionnaires at once and just kind of, seeing which ones match and which don't. Is that sort of the big day that you do? Because I mean, I'm just imagining that you're like Carrie Matheson from Homeland, and you have this like
Yeah.
giant board of like, all right, this terrace leads to that
That's
terrace. Like
so
this
funny
questionnaire.
that you should say that because I used to have that. I used to have those boards back in 21, 22, 23 when I did a lot more matchmaking. Now
Yeah.
I've built such an extensive community. We have 25 meetup groups all over the country and in Canada. These are places where our students and our alumni, where our clients meet up in person. We have leaders that run those single city, we call them single city groups in those other cities and states and even countries. And so we have an extensive community. I believe, and this is one of my taglines, that somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows your person, right? In fact, somebody right now is having lunch with their future spouse. And I believe in 6 degrees of separation. I think that science has been proven. For the listeners that don't know what that is, it just says that we're all 6 people away from knowing everyone in this 8+ billion person world. The problem is that science came out when I think there was only 6 billion people in the world. So I believe that we're even closer than 6 degrees of separation. You might be more like 5 or 4 from knowing everyone. And so really understanding that and understanding how connected you are and leveraging those connections is how I matchmake. Because when I play back the tapes on all of my matches, they're together, they're matched, they're in love, they're getting married, they're already married now. When we play back the tapes and they get to know each other deeper and deeper and deeper, start to share more and more and more life stories, they realize that they've crossed paths many times. They realize that they had a friend in common during college. They realize that the brother of a cousin, worked at the same place as a sister. There's just all kinds of touch points where there's similarities where they could have met before they did, but they just didn't. And one of the reasons why they didn't, because I think we're missing the village. And so what I do and everything that I do is to bring back the village, to bring back the community-based matchmaking of the old days. Because outsourcing your love life to an algorithm is okay if you see it as a tool and not as your matchmaker. Because a lot of people do meet on apps, but once again, we can really be helping so many more people meet that are not having success with technology if we will bring back this kind of mindset. And I call it the matchmaker mindset.
So you've watched
You and
all
your
of Love Is
wife,
Blind season.
you and your wife,
Wait,
you
what?
met on an app, but do you guys have anything in common? Did you guys find out that there's any touch points between the two of you?
Like what we had in common when we first
Well,
met,
not in
like what we were.
common, but, like, did you find out that you had any spaces in common or places in common or people in common? Like, if you thought through your life, was there any place where you're like, "Man, we could have met?" but we just didn't.
Ooh, that is a very good question. Well, I mean, Vermont, where we live, it's a state, but it's basically known as one big small town.
Yeah,
And I remember at the time I lived in a town called Linenville, and she lived in a town called Island Pond before we both eventually got our house here in Richford. And I had mentioned like, oh, I live in Linenville, and she was saying like, oh yeah, yeah, I've gone there all the time to eat with friends at restaurants and stuff like
exactly.
that. So yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
You
So
guys
that's
probably
that.
cross paths, you know? You probably cross paths. My
Absolutely,
husband
and
and
also
my
yeah,
husband's my neighbor. My husband was my neighbor. That's how I met him. I don't know if I said that or not, but he moved in next door to me. We both had gone through divorces. We had small children. He moved in next door. We very funny things ensued, but we ended up dating and getting married. And after we were married, we were moving into a new place that was bigger for all of us. And he had a VCR tape. That's how old the story is. And he popped it in. He's like, babe, come here. I want you to see this. It's so funny. And I come over and I'm watching this and I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. It was the old staff that he used to work on at this big organization. They had pranked him and they had done this. You remember the movie the show Punked with Ashton Kutcher?
yeah, of
The
course,
punk show
yeah.
on MTV. Okay. So they had done a version of this. They had punked their staff members by like setting up these scenarios where they think that something's happening that's not. And then they're like, oh, hey, you got punked. And so they filmed this and I was watching it with him and I was like, I've seen this before. And he's like, what? And I was like, wait a second. I said, they showed this at an outside festival that I went to a few years ago. And he goes, yeah, they showed it at this big picnic that our organization had for the public. They showed it on a Jumbotron. I said, I was there. I was at that
Oh my
picnic and I
god.
saw this. And I even asked my friend that had invited me because she worked at this organization. I said, hey, I said, who is that guy that they're like tricking and pranking in this video? And she told me who he was. I didn't remember, but I did say, I said, and she's like, why? Like, why? And I said, because I know him from somewhere. Like, I feel like I either went to school with him or we worked together. I just couldn't place him. Well, he ended up being my future neighbor and becoming my husband.
This is the kind of stuff that you can't get on Love is Blind. You just kind of like
Oh,
fill out an application and you meet people just by voice through these separate pods. But no, I mean, just that old school, like, oh, we're next door neighbors, but we could have been, meeting years earlier at this
yeah, it's
prank video
kismet. Like,
thing. And
I felt drawn to him when he was on a Jumbotron, and then I ended up meeting him later and marrying him. And so, but speaking of Love is Blind, I feel like the casting, you tell me, I don't know if your wife and you guys are real fans of the show, but from
we are.
the first season to now, it feels like they're purposely, and I made a reel about this on Instagram, purposely casting the men that women complain about, like the ones
Yeah.
that are not ready. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
are they purposely trying to find rage bait? What are we doing?
Yeah, yeah. To get a reaction out of people, to get people talking online, you have a great point. Yeah, no, I've certainly seen some examples of toxic masculinity in there. Whether they're truly not ready, or they just want to sleep with as many women as possible, or in Alex's case, they're just arrogantly confident about everything and don't want to show vulnerability. Like,
Yeah,
what were your so did you watch the entire season 10?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay.
watched the entire season and then, of course, just saw the reunion show when it came out. What was it, last week, or the
Yeah,
week before?
same.
And yeah, I just obviously those pod dates are 5 to 6 hours long for someone who knows how
Oh,
TV
wow.
production works. I used to work in television. So we're only seeing like 5 minutes of a 5-hour pod date. And the producers are only showing us what they want us to see. And so obviously there was lots of stuff that was happening that we weren't seeing. And the one healthy couple, Vic and Christine, they weren't getting a lot of screen time because they are healthy.
Yeah.
They kind of knew what they were looking for. So this experiment worked for them. I'm so glad they found each other. And of course, they're happily married, and that's exciting. But I was really surprised. Were you surprised at the reunion show to see all the happily married couples? I mean, there's quite a few of them.
Yeah. Oh my god. I think there was like they said like 150 people or so were in the audience from like all the 10 seasons of Love is Blind. But
Yeah.
um Yeah, they're trying to always do something different for the reunion show. Last year they had it outside and they had musical performers and they had a basketball competition with Chris Paul. And this year was like, hey, every happily married couple from the past 10 seasons. And it's basically a game of like, wow, I totally forgot you existed until now. And
Yeah,
that was
and you
great.
know what's so fun is some of them weren't even they weren't the person that they picked in the pods, but they're part of what's become that, that community or universe, like, like the
Yeah.
Bachelor Nation, now it's the Love is Blind Nation, and they're finding each other even though they weren't even part of each other's season because all these people hang out together, they have parties, they invite each other, and so that's bringing back exactly what I'm talking about, is bringing back the village. The more that we can get in community and like-minded community, the better chance we have of meeting someone who's really aligned with us for a long-term commitment.
Right, right. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
about the couples that we've seen? So we already know that Christine and Vic, they were perfect. They were, as Christine said in the reunion, a little bit too boring for reality TV. So,
She's right.
you know, and there was probably a reason that they had their vacation separate from
Yeah,
everybody else because the show kind of
yeah.
knew that they're going all the way and that's going to be good. What did you think about Bree and Connor?
Well, what's interesting about Brie and Connor is that, and I actually made some predictions about the couples that came out of the pods and were in Mexico, and all of my predictions ended up being correct, which was really
Oh,
interesting. But I predicted that they would break up, they wouldn't make it to the wedding day, and I was surprised at the reunion to hear they're back together. But I actually saw a podcast that she did right after the reunion where they're struggling again. So I really don't think they're a match. I think they'd like to be a match. I think that they're both good people. And I think that they both really truly want to have a connection with someone. But I just think that they're very fundamentally different in their energy, in what they want out of life. She's very type A, she's very driven, he's very laid back. He's very unbothered. And I just really don't think that those two type of people do well because what will happen eventually, she's young now, but what will happen eventually is she'll start driving him, pushing him, or mothering him, even though a more laid back personality in a woman probably would do just fine with him. So it's about compatibility. Once again, the C of compatibility. I don't know if you noticed, but we saw a lot of, and I don't think the producers did this on purpose because this would be very methodical of them. And I don't think that it's about methodology. I think it's about scandal when they're producing.
yeah.
But I do think that we had a lot of very interesting attachment style dyads. Are you familiar with attachment style?
What is that? No, no, tell me.
So there's insecure attachment styles like anxious and avoidant, and then there's secure attachment style. So people who they don't have any problem being vulnerable, they don't have any problem bonding with another person, being having intimacy as far as intimacy, communicating. And then anxious people tend to overdo it. They're like pick me people. They just at any cost they just want you to love them and they don't want you to leave them. They have fear of abandonment. And then there's avoidant people who feel fear of control or being controlled. Alex is a perfect example of someone who is an avoidant person. Like you see that he was never going to let anyone see him sweat. He was never going to be vulnerable. As soon as things came out of the sexual sphere with his partner and wanted to go into with Ashley and wanted to go into the more emotional, he couldn't meet her there because he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
closed off in that. It's like, okay, I'm fine if we're going to be F buddies. I'm fine if we're going to have this surface relationship. But if you want to dig deep into my soul, if you want to know me, then it's goodbye. you
Yeah, I
know?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
could my wife, like, really, really hates the type of person that Alex is, and you're talking about rage bait. I mean, she Alex is that person that could get you raging. But yeah, I mean, to see him go from, "Oh my god, Ashley's the hottest person ever, can't wait to have sex with her," and then, as you had mentioned, once, she tries to dig deep and get to know him
Yeah.
more, and he just becomes like, "Yeah, nope, I'm fine, everything's cool," and he's always
Yeah.
using sports metaphors for some reason, and
Right.
he was trying to put on a rehearsed performance for Ashley's dad at that dinner. Like, yeah,
Totally. That was almost creepy, actually. The 2 of them together, I was like, "Ashley, you might have picked someone kinda like your dad. I'm not really sure here what's happening." It's classic avoidant attachment withdrawal. So as soon as things get emotional, you saw him withdrawing. And this is what always happens. They'll withdraw and they'll blame it on, compatibility or chemistry. You're not really my type. I didn't really have feelings like that for you in the first place, kind of thing. And then the anxious attacher there's a lot of people that had different attachment styles that were not secure. But the biggest example of anxious attachment on this season was Devonte and
I was gonna
Brittany.
say, yeah, because Brittany, she like pre-bought the wedding dress, and it seemed like she was trying very hard to make it work with
Make
Devonta,
it
even though
work.
Devonta, yeah, yeah, Devonta clearly wasn't ready. He was pretty distant, like Alex, not really
Yeah.
into any physical intimacy at all with Brittany. So, yeah, talk more about that.
Well, and it always comes off as the anxious attacher being super delulu, right? She's just like, "We're gonna be married. We're gonna have kids," and he's over here like, "Do you even know you're here? Did they roofie you? Like, are you even alive? What's going on?" Because he was very shut down. So this is the classic anxious avoidant dyad. So the anxious attacher and the avoidant attacher, they like opposites attract, but they don't cohabitate. So they definitely attracted in the pods with the things that they were saying. Because people that can't access their emotions, they're attracted to people that are emotional. They're attracted to that as long as it doesn't get too serious and they don't have to actually access their own emotions. So I can see why he was
Mm.
attracted to what she was talking about in the pods. But as soon as they're together in real life, it's an immediate disconnect. Like he just checks out. He's like a deer in the headlights. But he says, I don't know if you saw at the reunion, he said to be fair, I don't do conflict well. I avoid conflict. And, she wanted all these things. She was telling me that this was what was going to be. And I just didn't want to like hurt her. It's like, bro, clarity is kindness. Clarity is kindness.
Literally.
Yeah.
What did you think about Britney's dad dressing Devontae down? Like, did you think that it was not a good idea for him to have that speech about how Devontae needs to be better?
I mean, I think that I can see why he wanted to do it, and it's kind of like it's defending his daughter's honor in a way. But you can also see that whoever marries Brittany has kind of a high there's a high watermark of the kind of man
Yeah.
that she's gonna need to be with. And I hope she finds it because that's my hometown. That's where I come from originally, Columbus, Ohio. That's where me and my husband met. That's where we used to live. She's a great girl and she definitely needs to work on the idea that she doesn't have to settle. You saw her settling. She's like, "Okay, Devontae, I know that you're not emotional, but I can work with that. I know you're never going to tell me that I'm pretty. Okay, I've gotten over that. Okay, that's fine." Like she just kept bargaining anything that I have to do to keep you, I'm going to do it. And there's so many people out there that do that and it's always a bad idea because it never works out.
So going back to Brie and Connor for a second, I what did you think about uh Bree really dressing down Connor's frat guyness, his man cave, like, the keg and everything like that, at his place? I found it like just very condescending. Do you agree, or do you feel like, no, I mean, that's Bree doesn't want that kind of frat guy lifestyle, and that's okay for her to speak that? Like, yeah, there just were a lot of moments where I just felt bad for Connor because Bree was just making him feel like shit for being the stereotypical bachelor guy.
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think that we forgot because all of them look a little bit older, I think, in my opinion, than they are. But these people are like 30, 31 years old. They're not 38. They're not 40 years old. Okay. And so I get it. There's a transition between adolescence and adulthood. And a lot of these guys seem to be in that transition. Jordan was in that transition. Dude had curb furniture. His house looked like he had furnished it with things that other people had thrown out on the curb, right? So typical flop house, frat house feel. Connor, to be fair, had more video games than an arcade. He had a whole room for gaming. He had all these consoles, all these joysticks. And I think it was kind of shocking to her because you can tell once again that she's a go getter. She's a type A girl. You go to her apartment, it's perfect, everything, just like Jess, the doctor, Jess, they have their life together. And I think this is where women in real time, in real life, are having a hard time, especially millennials. They feel like their male peers, their male counterparts are not growing up. They want to meet and marry and have a family. Their baby clocks are ticking. And these guys are stuck in what we call Peter Pan syndrome, like perpetual adolescence. And I see it a lot in my practice. I see it a lot in what I do. And it really is a real thing.
Is that a reflection of just the real world, that like women really don't have much choice beyond these guys that are like refusing to grow up? Or is it just more of a reflection of the show trying to create that dramatic dynamic that will entice viewers.
Once again, I think that the show kind of accidentally or on purpose showed what's really happening out in the dating streets right now. Instead of showing us what could be, they showed us what is. And I think that that was the rage bait because people are like, show us something else. We need to have hope. We need to have hope that there's something better. And there are good guys in the world, and there are guys that have their stuff together and that they're maturing. And, I call it the three M's. They're mature, masculine, and marriage minded. But there are a lot of guys like the Jordans and the Devontas and the Alexes and the Connors of the world, not all like the Vics of the world. And so I think what I personally believe that what has caused it is an empowering of women that simultaneously cause a disempowering of men. I think somewhere along the line, we're like, oh, women are oppressed. We need to empower them. We need to pour into them. We need to give them, opportunities, and we need to help them kind of woman up and be all that they can be. They can be anything they want. But I think at the same time, we disempower the boys because like, okay, you've had your time. We're not talking to you right now. We're talking to women. And I think that's happened. It's gone on for too long now. So we have an entire generation of men that have grown up not knowing what they're supposed to do when it comes to women. Do women want them to pay the check? Do they want them to open the door? Do they want them to help? Do they want them to this? So that because they don't know anymore. And I really see that especially in the middle and older millennials. They're just like, what do we do? What did you want us to do? Because you said one thing and you meant another. And I think that that's where we're kind of stuck. So we need to redefine what it looks like for us to come together because women are now saying they want princess treatment. They want to be a princess passenger. Have you seen this whole thing? So women are like, I want to be a princess passenger. I want to be a passenger princess. And I want my man.
Mm.
I don't want to think. I want to just be able to go through the airport and he has the passports and he has all the things. And I'm just here snacking. I'm just eating snacks and he's doing all the other stuff. That has not been true of just the last 20 years of
Hmm.
women. So I think it's a new thing where women are like, you know what? I think we bossed too hard. And now we want the other thing. The pendulum is swinging to the other side.
Right. What did Amber want? So Jordan and Amber, we saw their wedding, but at the reunion we saw that their marriage only lasted 4 months. And I yes, Jordan probably has a lot of growing up to do, but otherwise he seemed to be a very sweet, funny, charismatic guy. And Amber seemed to have this deep mistrust of him based on her past relationships with men. I think Jordan made it clear that it was more so the commitment with Amber that he was skeptical about, not so much the relationship with the daughter. He seemed to be okay with the relationship with the daughter. So, what were your thoughts on that relationship?
Well, to be fair, I think he was only around the daughter like 3 times. So it's easy to be okay with a kid when you never have ever really seen them. So I
Mm.
think I think that they were like the worst match because she hasn't done her heart work, right? So she's had these horrible relationships with men. She's definitely very scarred and very wounded still from those things. And then you have Jordan, who's just like a big golden retriever. So he picks her in the pod because he actually feels sympathy for her. She's telling her story. And you see this in Chris. Chris comes into the bar and he's drunk and he's acting crazy. And he's like, to Amber, he said, yeah, all of us guys thought you were crazy, all except Jordan. Jordan, felt sorry for you. And we knew that Jordan was the guy that could handle you. But the rest of us were like, whoa, she's unhinged. And so he's saying this in his little drunken tirade. And she's just like, but you can see that that probably was true because all of these people date each other on the first, when they first get in the pods, they all have to go on dates with everybody. And I think that you saw how she was oversharing in the pods, TMI. She was being not just vulnerable, she was kind of airing her dirty laundry, right? And no
Mhm.
one else was really interested in that energy except for Jordan, who, once again, he's the therapy dog. He's like the human version of a therapy dog. So he's like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah. So he starts feeling an emotional connection for her because his posture as a man probably is going to be someone who wants to help heal or fix, but he's still immature in that, right? Because he really hasn't had a lot of good relationships yet for himself. So I think that's why he said yes. I predicted that they would get married, by the way. I said they will get married and they will not make it. Like I knew that they were going to say yes
Huh.
at the altar, but afterwards they're going to break up because you can even see it on his face during the ceremony. He doesn't want to hurt her anymore because she's already been hurt by too many people. He doesn't want to marry her. He doesn't think that he can handle a wife and a ready-made family. He doesn't want to move out to the burbs. He doesn't want any of that, but he also doesn't want to hurt her. That was the mistake.
Wow. And lastly, because I know we're limited on time here, Jessica and Chris, I think I'm still trying to process the transformation of Chris, because from my memory in the pods, Chris seemed to be fine. And then he just got turned into the villain before you know it. Going from making Jessica feel like she's a beautiful, wanted person to when, all the couples are meeting up at this place and Chris is of course drunk off his ass and saying to anybody who will listen that, Jessica, she's okay, she's fine, but I'm looking for someone who does Pilates, like just stuff that didn't make sense because Jessica's a beautiful, wonderful, charismatic person. So what do you make of that? Like, why did Chris go from okay to just, oh, you're a dick? And then the reunion, he's watching back and he's just like, I don't know who that was, I'm completely sorry. I was expecting him to fight back, but why did he exhibit that villainous behavior?
Well, I think alcohol played into it.
Oh, that's
Once
it.
again,
Okay.
I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and so I have friends that have run into Kevan. Remember Kevan, who couldn't make a decision? He
Yeah.
couldn't he couldn't choose because
Oh, yeah.
he wasn't wired to be able to say I love you and propose to someone. Like he couldn't make a decision because it just wasn't the right thing for him. When they cast this show, they're casting personalities that can do this really fast, right? But he just wasn't able to do it. And he said to the person that I ran into, he said, you have to keep in mind that they're giving us huge quantities of alcohol. He said, we're sitting in these pods for 5 to 6 hours and all we're doing is drinking. He said, you drink way more than you normally would drink. He said, and some people get really vivacious when they're drinking and some people get really shut down and quiet. He said, that's kind of his personality when he's drinking. So that's why he seems really low key and kind of confused because there's a lot of alcohol at play. And Chris, when he is wilding out and even crashing out, he is really intoxicated. And so I think that brings out the worst in people. There's no self control, there's no filter. I do think you tell on yourself about a lot of the way that you really do feel, though. Chris at the reunion, I think that he probably talked to a PR person or someone that told him, hey, this is television. This could kind of haunt you for the rest of your life. You better go in there and try to, do some damage control. I think he probably wanted to say a lot of things, but he was biting his tongue because of the damage control aspect of it. I think it was interesting, though, that Jessica already has a new man. And once again, from the same communities, from the Love is
Mm,
Blind community, he seems super serious about her.
yeah.
I did notice that Emma was really surprised that Mike had a new woman already. She was there too. And I think that she looked like she was dressed and ready for her and Mike to kind of maybe pick up where they left off. For him to be like, "Oh, I haven't seen you. You look so pretty. Let's talk." But he had a woman, so um, I think
And I
that
promise, and I promise
yeah,
that's actually the last couple that I wanted to talk about, Mike and Emma. I wanted to
okay,
get your thoughts about that because
yeah,
that wrapped up in a way I didn't expect. Because the whole thing with Mike and Emma, I found them both to be great people, but clearly Mike wanted kids. Emma was very skeptical about it. It seemed like there were some points where Mike was pressuring her to go in that direction. And then at the altar, you would think, oh, Emma would be the one to say no, but Mike is like, nope, I'm going to be the one to say no because you don't want kids, and I cannot have that. Emma was about to, I think she already said yes at the altar, didn't she? Didn't she lead
yeah,
with
she did,
yes?
yeah, yeah, she
And
did.
then, yeah, we mentioned at the reunion, you had mentioned that she, dressed up, ready to go, and maybe wanting to see if things work with Mike, but Mike has already moved on with somebody else. What did you make of that? Because that, I thought it was going to be very much Mike is yes, he's clouded and not thinking clearly, and Emma is a no, but to see it twisted like that, it was like really interesting, you know?
Yeah, well, this is, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I'm just going to say this, that people, this show has been around for over 10 seasons, okay? And so we already know what it looks like at the end. And so all the people on this show know what it looks like at the end. They know the reunion show. They know that there's a couple arcs that you can take. You can take the victim arc, you can take the villain arc like Chris did, or you can take the I'm just doing what any of you would do, the relatable arc, right? Like I'm choosing myself or we weren't compatible. And that's what Mike chose. I don't believe that he didn't marry her because she wasn't sure on children. I think he used it as an excuse not to marry her so he didn't look like a douchebag. I do. I think that
Really?
he did not wanna marry her. I think that he loved it that she wasn't willing to just be like, "Yes, I'll have your babies," because he was able to use that as an out. As an out, "Well, she wasn't really sure, and I just couldn't make this decision because I know that that's what I want." I think that that is what he did, and I think that he was never after their being in person and after being in relationship, I don't think he ever really wanted to marry her.
Why is that? Was it because of her arm? Was it something in her
No,
personality?
I
Like
don't think
what
it had
what
anything to do with that. I think it was more personality and compatibility. I think that their personalities weren't compatible. It made it remember, we're hours and hours of footage and only certain things are making it into the editing, but it made it into the editing several times that he didn't like the way that she lived. Like they lived together. He didn't like the way that she lived. She was super messy and she just thought it was
Yeah.
funny. And I think he thought she was really immature in a lot of ways. And even though his parents, his family seemed really nice, and I don't think that they're mean people, I don't think that they liked the match at all. And I think that he comes from a very influential family that they were like, "Yeah, this is not the right girl for you."
Yeah, I mean, because Mike comes I was telling my wife Tony as we were watching, he comes from this big Italian family and,
Yep.
Italians, they have big families, they're Catholic, they're very much about, like, let's have a family with, like, 10 kids
Yeah.
and let's all be merry at the dinner table, so
Yeah.
this was a great conversation, Jackie. I know we have to go here, but before we do, like, for anybody that wants to look more into your matchmaking and relationship coaching, how can they follow you on socials? Is there a website you wanna promote as well? Like, give us everything.
So I'm super easy to find, just 2 places, jackiedorman.com and Jackie Dorman Official on Instagram. So that's how
Love
you can find me. I'm that on Facebook as well, but I really don't hang out anywhere besides Instagram, and then my website has everything you need.
love that. And The Delicious Culture. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, thedeliciousculture at gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, feedback about this episode, at The Delicious Culture on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Subscribe, comment, like, share. Love it. We would appreciate it. And Jackie, again, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank
For those
you.
of you, yeah, of course. For those of you listening and watching, let deliciousness ring.